Hey, we'll be hopping on in like a minute.
Cool.
Hey, we'll be hopping on in like a minute.
Cool.
So your cue, man. Hello?
Yo. I'm assuming I'm doing all this right.
Yeah, I can't see you now, though. Nope.
Yo.
Hold on, I have it running on another,
Assuming I'm doing all this right.
I can't see you now, though. I have it running. Go ahead and talk so you can see if you pop up on the screen.
Hello.
Yep, that works.
All right. I'm getting like a feedback thing too of multiple, like it's.
I had the live recording running on some
Oh.
other apps, so I just closed it all off.
Okay, gotcha.
Actually, I'm making sure I don't have any still open.
How's it going, guys?
Hey, camera. Cool.
Cool. I think we're all good. I'm gonna get this little guy moved out.
Man, you chopped off all your hair.
Yeah, man, I had to go. I got pretty shaggy. Maybe not the best thing to do in winter when I work outside, but
Yeah, man, I can't even imagine.
dude, I was straight up in the middle of the polar vortex today.
I was like totally like unkempt, and then I was like, I don't have to go anywhere today and be seen. I was like, oh shit, I've got that comic book commentary thing.
Hey, Josh, it's pretty hard to hear you this time around.
Headphones in.
How about me? Am I all right?
I can hear you all right.
Okay. So
Still getting the hang of these different platforms because unfortunately we get by far the best views on Facebook. That's through the screen sharing, and Google Hangouts ties into YouTube, so when you talk, you pop up on the screen automatically. It's great.
yeah.
So, actually, if anyone watching this has any comments and they want to post like any suggestions that they have for us, we're still like continuing to improve this so we can get these comic book commentaries looking really slick. Yeah, so but I can just jump into it. I'm Josh Blaylock, the Commander-in-Chief at Devil's Due, and we publish Final Street, which is created by writer Scott Schmidt and artist Brian Atkins, who are both on the air with us right now. And we were just going to go into the next episode of Comic Book Commentary, which is sort of like inspired by DVD movie commentary. It's just an excuse for us to basically sit around and BS, but we can go through the comics themselves and talk about the process that went into them creatively. Final Street's the perfect book because it's got so many Easter eggs in it. And Brian, do you want to kind of give a spiel on what Final Street's all about for people who haven't heard of it?
Yeah, so Final Street is pretty much a homage to the side-scroller beat 'em up of the of the 90s. And so the premise of the story is you have Sully, who's the main character, and her best friend and trainer Kumi. They go out to rescue their friend Franklin, who has been kidnapped by the local gangs in the city in this crazy city, and craziness ensues.
So it's in Scott. Do you talk about the inspiration more?
Well, inspiration is first and foremost is those games from that era. The whole idea came about 3 years ago. I kind of got into heavy retro gaming, retro games, and as I was piecing stuff together, I just kind of remembered, like, some of my favorite games from back then were the beat 'em ups. And as I started to replay them, I just found this like common thread of how the girlfriend getting kidnapped was basically in every single one of those games. And I'm just playing along and I see that and I'm like, huh, they should have made one where, like, the boyfriend gets kidnapped or something like that. And then at that time I just happened to sort of be kicking around ideas for new comics and stuff, and I was like, wait a second, I wonder if that would work as a comic. So just kind of started putting the pieces together at that point and trying to, find out what would carry over to the comic, and what wouldn't work and stuff like that. So, basically it's just those games and sort of like how you just pick those games up and you don't need anything to be able to understand what's going on. You just go in and you start punching and you start kicking and you're having a ton of fun. So that's basically exactly what we wanted to happen in the comic.
You guys are both really quiet on my end. I don't know if that's just my the settings or not, but I've got the volume turned up. Hopefully, if anyone's watching, let us know if you can hear us okay in the chat. And actually, you already kind of talked about one of the Easter eggs, which we have right here. If anyone's familiar with Double Dragon, this was kind of like one of the first things that sold me on the book that had me cracking up. You want to talk about the Double Dragon for anyone who doesn't know?
So one thing at Double Dragon, what I think is hilarious is, like, you press start, you get ready to go, and within a couple seconds, there's this, you have, what was her name, Miriam,
I think, or Maria, one of the two.
Yeah, and so she's just standing out in front of, like, their garage, and these three guys just come up, and one punches her in the gut, throws her over the shoulder, and walks away. And then you step out of the garage, and it's like, okay, well, time to punch people in the face. And they just immediately go right for it. And so it was always just so iconic. But what I thought was great was that those games, they just boiled down absolutely only the necessaries were there. And it's like, okay, girl kidnapped. Guys go after her, and beat up enemies. It was so straightforward and fun.
And that scene, it's seared into my brain. When I was a kid, I used to go, my mom would take me to the bowling alley before I could go to school because she bowled in a league. And so I would go with her, and all of her friends would just give me quarters to go play in the arcade, and Double Dragon was one of those games. So, I was at the age where I probably didn't beat the first level no matter how many quarters I had. So, like, whenever I ran out, I would just sit there and watch the gameplay and stuff. And that was one of the things that kept looping, was this woman getting punched in the stomach. And then, as a kid, I was always just like, oh, man, that's horrible. So,
it's totally, like, it should be off as a preface that it was Pamela. Actually, I'm going to look for that. It's like total, like, 80s mini skirt.
Yeah.
Somehow they got all that across in, like, 16-bit.
So what crazy is, because other games, so for instance, like, one of the other main notable games that the series was based on was Final Fight. In Final Fight, the girlfriend also gets kidnapped, but you don't see that. They call up Mayor Hagar, and you have, like, the Mad Gear gang who kidnaps her, and they tell them. And then you see her tied up, but you don't see her actually getting punched and taken. And so I remember, because I had played Final Fight first, and so whenever I had first played Double Dragon, I remember being like, oh my goodness. It just felt like she was in so much more danger because you saw her get kidnapped,
Yeah.
It's so crazy. It's like, this is what we were raised on.
Right.
I can actually, I'm gonna see if I can share that.
Yeah, man. If you got a problem, just throw on your fisticuffs and go solve it. That's...
Yeah, it was. Oh, here we go. So wrong. It's like how many like 7 and 8-year-olds are sitting here playing this?
Yeah.
Like, go 80s. So
well, I mean, even from the Japanese to American releases, I mean, they would censor the games all the time. And I know in Final Fight, whenever they show her tied up, and when they're calling in the ransom, in the Japanese version, she's wearing a bra, and she's tied up to, I think, a chair or a barrel. I can't remember which. But then in the North American release, I mean, she's wearing, what was it? I think they changed it to a red dress. Which,
less messed up in certain ways and just more screwed up in others.
Yeah, exactly. Either way, they both got punched in the gut. It starts right off with just...
And then the best part about that, spoiler alert, if you make it to the end of the game, the whole time it's like it's one of the characters' girlfriend, and it's the other guy's brother or best friend or whatever.
Yeah.
And they get through the whole game at the very end, after you've beat all of these big bads, you decide, okay, now we're gonna fight each other over her, and then she just walks off with whoever wins.
Yeah,
she's totally happy about it.
Pretty messed up.
Talked about just objectification. I mean, she's in those games, and so I think that's one of the reasons why it was a lot of fun to flip that around and give them a chance to be the heroes and to to be the ones that are capable on the street,
right.
to handle themselves. And
as you learn, Franklin is kind of like a Ken doll character.
Definitely.
We don't really know him that well yet, but
yeah, there's a reason behind all that, and that's one of the things that's kind of interesting, because I think the first issue, it sort of has to be the way that it is. It's like straight up just the first level of every beat 'em up you've ever played, and that has to be that way. And it might come off a little bit that there's not much there, but there's actually quite a bit going on with a lot of the characters, and that once we spring into issue 2, it sort of starts to separate itself from just that, stereotypical beat 'em up stuff.
Yeah, I think we do make it a point to keep the punches per page. I don't know what that quotient is, but the punches per faces punched per issue is still high. But but that's one of the things that, because I was doing a signing with Scott, so Scott was actually doing a signing in Columbia, Missouri, and he asked me to come along, and so I also I set up and was a part of that signing. And because Scott and I had worked on a couple small things earlier, and that was after the signing. He said, "Hey, I want to pitch some ideas to you and let me know what you want to do." And whenever he told me about Final Street, I was like, "That one," And he had rattled off a couple other story ideas to me, and I was like, "Nope, that one. That's the one I want to draw." And so there was this sub shop next door, and so we just went right over after the signing. You just hashed out a bunch of the story, or just the premise, and Scott had the premise, but things that we wanted to see, things that we wanted to explore. And one of the great things is that in those games, there wasn't ever a spot where you could really get some story. The characters weren't having dialogue while they were fighting or traversing the map or the city where they were at. Whereas you assume whenever you're playing it that, obviously these people know each other. Obviously they have interacted, but you don't catch any of that in the game. And that was a really great opportunity in doing this in a comic book form where we can show those interactions. They can have the conversations, during and in between those action beats. So that way we actually get to know who the characters are, get to develop a story. Instead of kidnap girl, punch people in the face, and beat boss,
Yeah.
Fight your brother.
Right, yeah.
And maybe there's like something cathartic to those kind of games when you're a little kid and you're like always fighting with your actual siblings.
Yeah, I know. Well, for me, the cathartic nature of the games was that like I was terrible at fighting games, like versus games. Because like so you have your friends over or whatever, and like you're if you're the one who sucks at Street Fighter, it's just like, well, awesome, yay.
Yeah.
So that's why I always gravitated towards beat 'em ups, because then we could just be on the same team.
Well, for me too, because growing up with 5 older brothers, and we owned Street Fighter and a couple of those other games, like I just got my ass handed to me all the time.
Oh yeah.
And so being able to be on the same team and it's us versus the gangs, that was it was a lot of fun because there wasn't many couch co-op games back then.
Yeah, not really.
You had like your Contras, but like Mario Kart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a lot of those games had you like switching off the screen, and like taking turns or whatever, and that always sucked.
So. For me, I was like, yeah, I'm a little bit older, so it was like I'd already been going to the arcades for a while, and like these were like all the exciting new games that evolved out of, like the original Mario Brothers, not Super Mario Brothers, but Mario Brothers, and all that stuff. And they started going into the fighting like side scrollers, but I like that this really kind of keeps going into the 90s. So actually, we should probably just like this thing is riddled with Easter eggs. So I think I don't think we're like ruining anything. Let's just show people. I can. You guys want to direct me, and I can like go through. Is the Double Dragon Gag the first Easter egg? Because I don't even know all of them.
Well, start with the cover.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. The cover is an homage to Double Dragon 2 cover art for the which port was that? Was that the NES?
Yeah.
Cover on the NES?
Yeah. I think it's the NES. It's definitely the NES one. I think it was the arcade one as well.
Right.
There's a couple derivatives of it, but it's all the same scene of them on this. It's my favorite cover art of anything ever.
It's so 80s.
It's my favorite piece of art ever made is that cover, and like I don't know, there's just so much going on and stuff. So yeah, the helicopter in the background, which is funny because in the second one it's only like in the background for once, like nothing really happens with the helicopter a whole lot. So all those elements are great. So
yeah, that was about as 80s as you could possibly be.
Yeah, man.
The cover was drawn by my brother Robert, and he's doing the covers for the series, and it was great because he's like, "Do you guys have any ideas for like what you're wanting to do for the cover?" And we just sent him the Double Dragon. We said, "As close to this as you want to get," and so they're on the stairs with the railing around them, and the helicopter in the back, and the city, and we kind of left some of the baddies out because we wanted to highlight the main characters. And change the time of day just to get that color palette that we were really shooting for, which is like that early 90s pink and neon.
Yeah, but if you're really into it, you're not going to miss it.
Yeah.
So I guess after the cover and the Double Dragon catalyst of the kidnapping, I guess the first one would be the restaurant owner. He has a little blurb line that he gets to say, which is, "Oh no, my restaurant!" And basically, that's a final fight. If you've played that game, there's this scene where in between levels you get to destroy a car for bonus points, and for some reason you're just randomly beating up a car, and then after you're done, the owner comes in and says, "Oh no, my car," and then has a breakdown about it. So,
well, that's another one of those interesting Japanese to North American censorship items. So it was one of the gang members. So he was one of the gang members that you were beating up in the levels previously, which is, I think, one of the reasons why you tear up the car. But in the Japanese version, he said, "Oh my God."
Oh. Huh.
And North America was like, "Nope, we're not doing that," apparently. And so they changed it to "Oh my car" for the North American release. And so, which
so
is
it was
fun.
acceptable for kids to play games where you could punch the girlfriend in the stomach, wear the menu skirt, showing panties hanging out of her ass, and like carry her off, but you couldn't say "Oh my God" because that is not kid friendly.
So, so if you go to page number 1,
okay,
we start up with an establishing shot of the city, and in that one there's back to page number 1. And so you have up on the top right, it's Cap-Com instead of Capcom.
Yeah.
And then let's see here. On the left-hand side, walking down the street, is actually Hacker Man from the...
it is from Kung Fury.
Kung Fury. So there's a couple of small Easter eggs. So if you go to the panels below that, let's see, the very bottom panel, I believe. So that's me on the left. So that's me on the left.
Exactly what you wore in Louisville.
Yeah, exactly. Guns out and everything. But I'm wearing the Warriors outfit from the 80s movie Warriors, where they wear like the jeans and the red leather vest.
And Elvis.
Yeah, because as popular as those games were, I mean, the movies during that same time, I mean, like Warriors is like a movie adaptation of these games, practically. So I, toss that in there as well. So let's see.
I think after that,
what's on page 2? Let's go.
Sure.
There's about something every page, but in the background, just the little group is playing hacky sack.
Sorry, 1 second. I got a little lag here.
You're fine.
But where again?
So, let's see here. Let's see here. Yeah, I don't think there's anything necessarily on page 2.
The next big thing is the subway.
Yeah, aside from the punch in the gut, carry over the shoulder. Yeah, so we get to the subway, and so many of these games also have a subway level, which is pretty notoriously. So as they begin chasing him down into the subway, so we have Rotor, which is the name of the enemy that throws him, Franklin, over his shoulder. And just like a lot of these games, the enemies have names. Each of them have a different name, and they're a different category of bad guy. And so Rotor is kind of like our mini boss for stage 1. So we jump into the subway, and this panel that's on the top half of the page that Josh is showing, kind of like an artistic homage or Easter egg, is all these games used to do what was called infinite perspective or parallel perspective. So that way, whenever you would be walking, down the street in the game, the perspective never had to shift as you walked past a building. The perspective was always parallel in one direction, moving off into the distance, which gives a very odd feel, but it's very distinct to those old,
definitely
side-scroller games. Which it's it played a lot with my brain having to draw it, and especially later on when there's a little bit more going on. But at first, we weren't going to have the health bars.
I never even realized you did that. So would that be like on the pillars there?
Yeah, on the pillar.
Actually, that's not proper perspective. That's
Nope. It's all parallel.
I did not catch that. Crazy.
Yeah. It was just part of the art direction, so that way it was easier for the programmers. It wasn't quite isometric perspectives on those, but yeah, that parallel or infinite perspective. We do it a couple times in this issue. So
the 80s thugs have to have crazy Liberty Spikes mohawks.
Yeah.
We got this guy here. This is probably your closest brush with copyright infringement.
Yeah. That's for sure.
There's a random stranger that shows up.
Yeah, Scott, you want
to... a clue.
With basically this guy, so obviously right here we have a really hard tribute to Renegade, which is, technically maybe not the first, I'm not even sure, but generally received as the first beat-em-up game. As we know it, it was definitely like, the one that every other one that came after it sort of built off of. Your single guy going after this gang who had something to do with being evil and criminal and whatnot. So, as we were like putting together the series and thinking about it, we just there's so many cool characters within all these different games, especially Final Fight and Streets of Rage, and we just wanted to be able to show something with them, and so we decided to populate our city, Transit City, with homages to a lot of these characters. This one is his name in our universe is Renegade, and basically he's a guy that's known to have done this really badass thing of taking down a gang, single-handedly, years and years ago in Transit City. So this is him like 20, 30 years later, and he just basically patrols the subways and, takes out any trash that he sees. So lucky enough for Sully and Kumi, they happen to...
Time to take out the trash.
Yeah. So he shows up in the nick of time to be able to, throw these guys down so that they can keep on the trail of Franklin.
And if you look up the Renegade box art, we even designed the enemies to be homages to the ones that were even on the box art as well, and it's fun to see that, because when you look at the what it's an homage to, it's fun to see just Kumi and Sully, sticking on the end of the train there. That it's obviously not in that old cover. The also, just as a quick note, on the left-hand side of the train, on the under the window, it has a SS and a KC and a heart and little graffiti there, and that's for Scott Schmidt over here and his fiancée at the time, Kaylin Carter. So I had them tag the train with a heart over there just for fun.
Oh, it's like he went in and tagged some stuff for her.
Yeah.
I'm trying to post our link real quick on back over on Facebook. It was giving me problems before. I just trying to like funnel some people.
Yeah, where is it? Just this link right here, the Google Hangouts link?
Yeah, like we'll post it onto YouTube later. The thing that sucks is like we posted on Facebook and just screwing around and get so many people, like it's so much traffic, whereas the YouTube we have to like post it afterwards.
Yeah. We'll
share it on the email blasts and all that. But just the Facebook thing just sucks compared to YouTube's capabilities.
So just you couldn't have multiple people on the Facebook?
Yeah, I'm going live on the Facebook now just with me sitting here. They're not going to see the screen shares, but it just says it's got a link to the YouTube thing telling people we're over there.
Nice. So
hey, yeah, if you're tuning in on Facebook, check out this little link over here. I don't know which corner my finger's pointing to on your screen, but all right, so I'll keep going.
Well, the next big one would be once they get on the train, we have an ode to the most bizarre thing in any beat 'em up, which is meat found on the street. So, like, it's so funny as a kid.
Say that again. Raw. Oh, meat. Yes.
Yeah. As a kid, I never ever questioned anything about that.
Yeah.
As an adult, you're just, one, how could you do such a thing? And two, who put the meat in that barrel? Like,
Right. A freshly cooked Thanksgiving dinner turkey in an oil drum.
Probably like the most. That's probably everyone's favorite scene in the entire book.
Yeah. When I first drew that in the script, we were still debating how much we wanted to lean into these references. And at first, it was just like a candy bar. But after we had drawn it and gone back and realized that we really needed to kind of lean into these a bit more, we went with the whole turkey leg instead, and really just kind of went for that, which was definitely a better idea.
Scott Pilgrim movie missed an opportunity to do that.
The just left of her eating that in the first panel on that page, you see the guy in the blue tracksuit. If you look at his newspaper, it says Mayor of Metro City fired, which Metro City is the name of the city in Final Fight, and the mayor was Hagar. It was Mayor Hagar who was one of the main playable characters, and the idea is, so the mayor's daughter gets kidnapped, and then he goes on a rampage of bludgeoning hundreds of people on the streets of his own city. Like, of course he would get fired. He would get jailed. You don't just rip your shirt off and go out in the streets and beat people with a lead pipe.
So this thing is like full of stuff.
You do if you're a former pro wrestler turned mayor.
Yeah.
Was that the story?
Yeah. He started as a pro wrestler. He's actually in a game called Saturday Night Slam Masters, where he's a playable character. It's got a bunch of random made up wrestlers and stuff. So
that's hilarious.
That's where he starts out.
Yeah, so we went the Metro City Gazette there, and so.
All right, keep going.
So the next one would probably be they get to a fight scene where Sully goes one-on-one with the mini boss Rotor.
This guy's the best.
Well, I guess technically he's
Balboa.
Yeah,
Balboa.
So he's an Easter egg, I guess, as well. He's a combination of Andor and Abobo from Double Dragon and Final Fight. Basically, this crazy-looking, yoked-out giant man who you have to fight on the screen in both games. Who just anytime he comes on the screen, you're just terrified because you know you're going to get your ass kicked.
Right. So Bobo was his sprite was easily a third larger than everyone else's sprite, and he had this gigantic head, or whatever. And he was just a strong character, that showed up in the first couple levels. Yeah, he would just pick you up and chuck you. And then you have Andor, who debatably was based off of Andre the Giant, but he was the one who sported the pink leopard print tank top, which we decided to adopt.
No, Bobo, but who's the other guy? I'm looking that up right now so we can pull it up.
Andor. Andor's actually,
From what game?
Final Fight. But he's actually a playable character in many of the Street Fighter franchise games now. So Cody, Hagar, Poison, and Andor are all characters that were brought in from the Final Fight series.
Oh, we found a little picture of the evolution of Andor.
Yeah.
And they just added Abigail to Street Fighter V.
Oh yeah.
He's a boss in Final Fight. Relento, Sodom, he's a Final Fight. The whole Final Fight universe is basically in those games now.
I remember whenever I played, what was it, Street Fighter 3 Alpha, I think. I can't remember exactly, but that's the one where Cody shows up in his prison jumpsuit, where he has the chains and stuff. Because the idea is that he got arrested because the end boss of Final Fight, you kick this guy out the window of a skyscraper,
Oh, no.
And so I believe the canon is that Cody got arrested after that, and he's been serving serving a sentence for essentially murdering a man and kicking him, defenestrating him from this tower.
Here we go. Here's the evolution of Vandor.
Yeah.
Oh man, that Final Fight 3 is horrible.
He's got style.
Yeah. So we took the chain, and instead of
There's
just
some
having
Abobo.
him, yeah.
For anyone who's not familiar with that amazing character.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was like taking the facial hair from Abobo, and then the chains, instead of having them wrapped around, wrap them around Alboba's, wrists and stuff, and so.
Yeah, and like one thing it's kind of funny is just like hard from a design perspective. Like we knew we wanted to make an homage to that, but like to capture somebody who's like terrifying, but is also a bit of a pushover because it's the first boss, and you're kind of just getting warmed up, and nobody should really die at the first boss. When you're playing.
Yeah, I'd say only thing I'd say on this one is well done.
So during this fight, is it just before this that they fight Rotor?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically, before this, Sully has a little one-on-one with Rotor, who she kind of gets her revenge on him for kicking her through a window and stealing her boyfriend. But one of the things that we decided to do, and was we gave Sully and Kumi both special moves, which isn't something that a lot of those games necessarily had. As it got later into the 90s, they started to do that. Some of the fighting game stuff you started to carry over where you would enter in button commands or move commands to pull something off. Or just like, one button does your special. This one in particular, you kind of have to, I don't know if this is a really hard one to catch. Basically, Rushing Beat is a Japanese trilogy of beat-em-ups that came out as 3 different games over in the U.S. So it's kind of confusing. But second one, Brawl Brothers, was the one that I had as a kid, and they had this character who was a dude in a like a leather jacket, and he had this move where he just does this fury of punches and stuff. So this is kind of just an homage to that character, one of my favorites as a kid, and throwing up that name. That if you spot that, you're kind of a beat 'em up pro.
Which Brawl Brothers, the second one, I think is definitely the best one.
Yeah, definitely.
Out of that trilogy.
The first one does have one of the best covers of all time. If you want to look that one up, it's pretty stellar.
So then this is also, there's a lot of going along with some of the fighting games. This flurry attack. You have your E Honda and your Chun-Li and all those characters as well who have those types of moves. And that's where I took the visual aspect of, which was actually fun because I drew the hand and then I just copy pasted and blurred it on each of them instead of drawing that hand, 10, 12 times.
It's probably what they do on the game animations.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So
we'll keep on rocking.
So just after this one, something that should be fun to note, this character in the blue tracksuit, the person in the blue tracksuit was actually is somebody who, whenever we had run the Kickstarter for issue 1, it was kind of like, it was a tier to get drawn into the book. And so they ended up being, Scott had written this kind of throwaway villain. And so, that was for the reward tier, that's who they got to be. And then whenever I got towards the end of the book, this guy just gets demolished by Kumi. So much so that he gets his arm broke and he gets knocked out and everything of that sort.
That's the best thing that can happen if you're in a cameo.
I know. So I sent it to the guy and I said, "This is the script. This is what happens if you don't want to get your arm snapped and everything else. Just let me know. I'll make you somebody else if you really want to." And he's like, "No, that sounds great." And he was all on board. And so I drew the layouts and sent those to him, and he sent me back, him taking pictures of himself, in each of these poses. And
that's awesome.
Yeah. So later on, he said his wife, she's like, I can't even look at it, because.
Oh man, half the time people are like they want you to have him killed in the book.
Yeah. And just before that whole fight scene, we see another one of those parallel perspective shots, with the life bars, and which is fun. Yeah, just as soon as they get off the subway there.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. So,
and this one, it's funny because this one has them where they've lost some life, along the way, and their scores are different, stuff like that.
Also, in the background, I believe there's an arrow that says "Go."
There is, yeah.
Yeah. So on any of these old beat 'em up games, whenever you would stall, to let you know that you needed to progress the story or the game along, they would have these big arrows that flashed "Go," or just big arrows that would flash you that way, and so just toss that into the background.
Nice. Man, there's actually a lot more than I even realized on this. So I'm a publisher.
Let's see.
Balboa.
One thing that it doesn't have a visual, but
Tiger Palm.
Yeah, the tiger palm is just something we kind of. It doesn't have any reference to anything in particular. It was just something that suited Kumi as a character, more of a not necessarily an offensive move, but something a little more defensive. So it stuns him basically.
Yeah, because whenever Scott and I were putting this together, we started putting together an instruction booklet on how the game would play. With the button combos, what each of the special moves would do, passive attacks, as well as finishing moves, and so that was, we were trying to think of how, if you were playing this as a co-op, how the two special moves would work together, and as characters progress, you get more special moves and stuff, and so that was a fun one to put together for her.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. The only other thing is that the gang that they're fighting in this one, they say it a couple times, is the Bare Knucklers gang, and Streets of Rage in Japan is called Bare Knuckle, so that's just another reference to one of the foundations that this comic is built on.
Awesome. I think you know what? I think I'm gonna look up the video to tease people with for the upcoming Kickstarter campaign, if you guys want to talk about that. And then also, Brian, you were going to mention about commissions being available for that. We've also posted a link to the web store, so you can go there to buy either physical or digital copies of the book. And we are going to create, I need to text Kit right now, our assistant publisher, because we're going to offer a 25% off code on our web store for anyone who's joined us on this video. It's only going to last for 24 hours.
One cool thing about the book too, just in general, is that each issue comes with an original soundtrack. So we have a chiptune artist, Silvio, that we hired and brought on to develop some music. So each one has a unique track that you can basically stream and listen to while you're reading the comic. So it tries to even put you more into that idea of you're playing and reading through a beat 'em up level.
Cool. All right, the code is livestream130, January 30th. So I'll put that in here. We'll also post that in the comments when we put this on YouTube later. Sorry, my windows have frozen a little bit here, so I'm having a hard time navigating back and forth. Cool. All right, so anybody seeing this, I just put that in the comments in the chat. I'm gonna find the link real quick to the Kickstarter, but this is gonna be awesome. Computer's starting to feel the pressure of running the YouTube video, the live feed right now. That's directing people over here,
Yeah.
and running this feed.
Yeah. So we're putting together all the assets and the artwork for issue 2, and Scott, so the script is all done, and I've done the layouts and some pages, and we got the cover work, done on that, and so things are really chugging along on issue. It's more like stage 2. As these characters, it's in a different part of the city. And we really wanted each issue to have like a boss at the end. We wanted each issue to feel like a different stage, instead of, while the story does continue, each, it's almost like another installment, a new level, a new location. You come across different bad guys, different enemies, different strategies to beat them. And I'm so excited for you guys to see the issue 2 bad guys. Because issue 1 was based on those urban, on the urban beat 'em up games, and so issue 2 we start jumping into some of the other influences that showed up in those games, like just the ninjas, the biker enemies. So you'll see some of that here in this video.
Let me play a little teaser here. Can you guys hear it?
I can't.
No.
It's not gonna be perfect, but he'll get the idea.
There we go. Yeah, so basically, man, we're just like, that's the final panel. This is them walking out of the subway. And that's where issue 2 basically starts right there. They're just continuing on the trail. And
I need to just save this GIF right now, so I have this.
Yeah, and the Neon District is the location that they'll be at, and they're facing off against the Crimson Blades, which is sort of a street ninja gang. So they're basically a criminal organization, a little more put together than the Bare Knucklers as far as their abilities and their.
Okay. Is that now, there's actually a whole game called Neon District that's runs on blockchain, and it's by Blockhead Games. Is that a reference to an older game?
It's a reference to Double Dragon Neon, which was a game, not really a remake. It was just sort of a new Double Dragon game that they released, and it's super 90s. It's like just.
I love it. It's one of my favorite beat 'em ups ever to play. So they got, for the concept art, they got this artist named Genzomon, which is kind of like his artist handle name, and he did the designs for it, and they kind of like revamped it all, but they absolutely kept that old the nonsense of the 90s. kind of storytelling and aspects and characters. And yeah, so that being my favorite beat 'em up. That was wanted to pay homage to that a bit.
And the Neon District, I guess, is sort of in reference to like, so the actual story of Final Street, the 4 issues, happens within one night. So the first issue happens over the course of an hour, and it puts them around midnight once they start issue 2. So they needed to be in a place that was going to be still like alive and hopping when they get there. So they go to the Neon District where there's nightclubs and gambling and bars and stuff like that. So, you know, that's just kind of where the locale really kind of influenced that name. What we needed to have going on to sort of continue the story, you know.
Yeah. Cool. Was there anything else you guys wanted to go over? Did you talk about the commissions, Brian?
I certainly can. So I am opening up my commissions again. I'm going to be handling them a little bit differently in the future. So pretty much you just send me a message. You can direct message me on any of my social media at Brian Atkins Art, and that's on Instagram, Facebook, Tumblr, Twitter. All those just Brian Atkins Art, and then just shoot me a message and I'll get you up on the list. And so having fun with that. And I do want to say that as much as I love drawing the comic book characters and all those, I will especially be excited to draw your video game characters. I don't get asked to draw those enough, and I love doing them. So hit me up with that.
And everybody knows them.
Yeah.
And there's so many.
Very cool.
One thing I would like to mention that we're going to have for the Kickstarter campaign is we're doing a reward that you can choose. It's called Become a Brawler, where Brian will actually take your photo. You'll get to pick a few options like your weapon, your fighting style, and Brian will basically make you into a beat-em-up character. If you know, looking at the designs of Sully and Kumi, like, he just knocked them out of the park. They're like some of the coolest characters I've ever seen in my life, and I love looking at them. So, like, he will do that exact same thing for you if, you know, like, you wanted to be your own beat-em-up character. So keep an eye out for that reward.
That's incredible. Cool. Well, everybody stay tuned to devilsdue.net. Make sure you're part of our email list, and keep tabs with everybody on social media. And again, 25% off for the next 24 hours. Live stream 1:30, and it's posted there in the chat. And if you're watching this after 24 hours, sorry, you suck. You don't get that. But no, say thanks for joining anyway. That's why we post these things afterwards. And hope you learned something. This was we're getting better at doing these. This was one of the most fun ones yet, and I think it's the first one with so many Easter eggs layered into the artwork. But cool. Well, thanks, guys. We will do it again sometime soon.
Sounds good. Thanks for having us.